All right, so today we're really diving into something, a topic that's been kind of hard to ignore lately, the Taliban, back in power in Afghanistan. And we're not just talking about like the surface level news here, but getting into the why, the how, the cultural clash, the whole shebang.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It really is. And the springboard for our deep dive today, a piece called Hail the Conquering Taliban, which, as you might guess, comes with a pretty strong point of view.
To say the least.
But before anyone thinks we've gone over to the other side, the point here isn't to agree with everything we read. It's more like, how can we understand a different way of seeing things, even if it pushes our buttons a bit? Yeah,
Exactly. Got to get uncomfortable sometimes to learn.
totally. So right away, this author doesn't hold back. They talk about feeling a kind of joy when the Taliban took over.
It's more nuanced than just, yay, Taliban, right? The author sees it as, like, this huge sign that the West trying to force democracy there just totally backfired.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really interesting because the author is also a Christian, which obviously adds another layer of
It's internal conflict.
exactly, because how do you reconcile being happy about this outcome while, maybe not being cool with how the Taliban does things?
It makes you think about how we react to global stuff.
Yeah.
Can you separate those two things, the outcome versus the how? It's tough.
No doubt. And that tension is what leads the author to this whole critique of the system. They're basically saying that the Taliban's comeback shows how Western values like equality, democracy, all that might be flawed.
We got to unpack what the system even means for this author, though. It's like this whole idea of the West being in charge, this belief that liberal democracy is the only way, and then often, using force to make it happen around the world.
So are they saying these values are bad in themselves, or more like the way they've been pushed on everyone else is the problem?
Yeah, I think it's more about effectiveness and context. Like, these values haven't stopped conflict, especially in a place like Afghanistan with its own history and culture. The author sees the Taliban being back as,
A rejection of the West's solution, basically.
Right, exactly. Like, maybe one size fits all doesn't really fit anyone, you know?
It's deep, man. And just when you think you're getting a grip on this article, it takes another turn. The author throws out this idea that this new Taliban, they might actually be CIA trained.
Yeah, that's where it gets kind of wild. They even point to stuff like prisoners being let go from Guantanamo as, like, potential proof.
Which, okay, is that reading too much into things, or is there something to that? What do you think?
It's definitely playing on those what-if scenarios we love, right? Yeah. But this is where we got to be careful, separate what we want to be true from what actually is. Information is powerful, man. Got to be critical.
And it doesn't stop there. This article, man, it keeps going. Later on, the author claims that a lot of Afghans, they'd actually rather live under the Taliban than, whatever the West was trying to do.
Yeah, that's where we got to be extra careful. It's one thing to try and see things from the author's view, but it's a whole other thing to say that a whole country feels that way.
Especially a place like Afghanistan, right? So many different people, histories. It's not exactly a simple place.
Exactly. The author talks about things like people wanting tradition or finding Western liberalism kind of empty. They even say they'd prefer if Afghanistan was, like, Orthodox Christian, but that kind of misses what's really going on over there.
Like they're putting their own ideas onto a whole culture that might not agree at all.
Exactly. And let's not forget, there are tons of Afghans who've been fighting against the Taliban forever. They don't get a voice in this article.
Yeah, especially women, girls, people from different religions. The Taliban being in charge, that's the opposite of what they want.
Absolutely. And those are the voices we got to listen to if we want to understand what's really going on.
Okay, so then comes, like, the most intense part of this whole thing. The author asks if, get this, the West needs its own version of the Taliban.
Hold on. Before everyone freaks out, they're not saying we need, like, violence and stuff, right? They even say that directly.
More like it's a thought experiment, trying to get us thinking.
Yeah, exactly. They see the West, especially compared to the Taliban, as, like, morally lost, no values, spiritually empty. And they're saying, hey, maybe some people here feel that way too, not just the Taliban.
So it's less about, like, becoming the Taliban and more about there's this anger, this emptiness that makes people question things, and it's happening everywhere.
Exactly. Huge societal changes. They come from somewhere, right? Frustration, fear, wanting something real to believe in. It's messy stuff.
And it's easy to just ignore an article like this, especially when it says stuff like that. But is there maybe something here, even if we don't like it? It's like looking into this messed up mirror, Might not like what's staring back, but makes you think, what if there's something there about us, about what we believe?
Right. It's like this wake-up call. And this is where the author makes this point that really sticks with you. They say real change, the kind that lasts, it can't be forced on people from outside. It has to come from within.
So with Afghanistan, are they saying that, like, no matter what the West tries to do, it's never going to really stick because it's us doing it, not them?
It's tricky. It's like the author wants us to really get where another culture is coming from before we try to change it, you know?
Which goes back to that system thing, right? Like, maybe our values, our way of governing, it shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all situation.
Exactly. And the whole change from within idea, it's not just Afghanistan. It's like they're making us look at ourselves, our own countries, and say, okay, what needs fixing here and how do we fix it, not have it forced on us?
Man, that's a lot to chew on. Way bigger than just this one article now.
Yeah.
Makes you think about how we deal with the whole world, like maybe we don't know as much as we think, and we need to actually listen instead of
Imposing.
exactly. It's got to be a confrontation, not us dictating everything.
Totally. It's about realizing the world's complicated. There's not always going to be a clear right answer, especially with cultures bumping heads and stuff.
Well, there you have it. Our deep dive into, well, the Taliban, but also a whole lot more, right? There've been some stuff in there that was hard to hear, but that's kind of the point, isn't it?
Let's just
Makes us think harder.
definitely can't shy away from the tough stuff if you want to learn.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us for this one. Keep those brains working, folks, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.